Dave and Stephanie had been together so long. Dave often joked that their relationship outlasted some people's entire lifespans. They first met when they were just 15. Back then, she had uneven bangs thanks to a pair of dull kitchen scissors, and he was never without his worn-down skateboard. Those summer evenings carried the scent of warm pavement and cheap soda. They'd sprawl on the bleachers, sharing half-stale popcorn, while debating which underground band would be the next big thing. In their eyes, no love burned brighter than theirs. Their romance followed the usual teenage drama, highs, lows, and emotional whiplash worthy of a soap opera. One month they were inseparable. The next they were breaking up and declaring in front of everyone in the cafeteria that they were done for good. Just friends forever this time. That pattern continued right up until graduation day, when they tossed their caps and all certainty into the air. Then life hit pause. Dave's mother decided he needed discipline and shipped him off to a military school 2 states away. She said it would make a man out of him. One week he was barely able to iron his shirt. The next he was waking before sunrise to march in formation. His only lifeline came in the form of letters from Steph, scribbled on ruled paper, full of tiny doodles, little hearts, and bad drawings of the dog they dreamed of adopting one day. By the middle of his junior year, the pressure cracked him open. On a bleak December day, Dave threw a few essentials into a duffel bag and caught a Greyhound back home. But instead of a warm embrace, he was met with the front door slamming in his face. "If you're grown enough to make your own decisions," his mom snapped from behind the door, "then you're grown enough to figure out where you're going to stay." He stood on the porch, stunned, snow dissolving against his lashes, wondering how being an adult had suddenly turned into a punishment. Steph saw his post online. "Any couches available?" and didn't think twice. Her rented studio smelled like dollar store candles and was decorated with permanent marker art. The futon made noises like it was giving up on life. But to Dave, it felt like coming home. They lived off instant noodles, swapped night shift horror stories, and slowly came to realize that playing the role of roommates was just a mask, one they were both ready to take off. When Dave finally kissed her on a random Tuesday after taco night, they both broke into laughter. The moment felt impossibly new and ridiculously overdue. Life didn't go easy on them. There were bounce checks, dead car batteries, and landlords who thought painting over black mold counted as repairs. Still, they pushed through, but the moment that hit hardest wasn't financial. It was a blurry night, too much tequila, and a clumsy kiss with a guy Steph had known in college. She cried, insisted it was meaningless, begged for forgiveness. And Dave, loyal to a fault, gave it to her. He convinced himself that love meant letting some wounds heal without reopening them, even if the scars still itched every time it rained. So when their friends celebrated their 15th anniversary at Applebee's with balloons, a generic sheet cake, and the whole cheesy setup, and toasted them as relationship goals, Dave smiled and raised his glass. But deep inside, he was counting the emotional costs no one ever saw. He never once threw that betrayal back in her face. Yet the memory remained, buried in a mental box marked fragile. Handle with care. He truly thought they'd been forged in fire, strengthened by everything they'd endured. He had no idea how fragile they'd become. That winter, Steph was let go from her job at the university after a new dean reorganized the whole department. She didn't wallow. She packed her diplomas into a box, tossed her whiteboard markers into a tote bag, and by the weekend, she was working the front desk at Flex Nation, the gym just across the street. The salary was smaller, but the benefits, free workouts, flexible hours, peace of mind, felt like a small miracle. In just a few weeks, Steph was lifting weights like she stepped out of a superhero training montage. Her conversation shifted from lecture halls to green smoothies, and Dave couldn't help but admire the transformation. Her posture was confident, her laughter brighter, and even their kids, Ethan in 5th grade and Katie just starting high school, began tagging along, challenging each other on box jumps and treadmill sprints. But behind the smiles and endorphins, something colder had crept in. Their bedroom, once a place of warmth, now felt like a glacier. Steph would crawl under the covers, her skin scented with minty muscle balm, murmuring about how tired she was. Meanwhile, Dave lay beside her, staring at the ceiling, reminding himself that patience was part of what he promised. Still, he couldn't ignore the pattern emerging. New lingerie matched down to the details, perfume misted behind her knees, carefully curated playlists that filled the room with slow beats and suggestion, but never for him. One night, he attempted a joke, hoping to lighten the distance between them. "Who's the fashion show for?" he asked with a smile. Her response snapped like a rubber band. "Why can't you just be glad I finally feel good about myself?" "I am," he replied softly, raising his hands in peace. "You look amazing. I was just curious." "This makes me feel alive again, Dave," she shouted, her voice cracking. Then came the door slam. He spent the night on the couch, springs digging into his back, until the first light crept through the windows. The truth shattered everything on a Thursday that had started like any other. Dave found Katie curled up on her bed, her face streaked with mascara, silent sobs shaking her shoulders. Panic gripped him as worst-case thoughts flooded his brain. It took gentle questions, soft reassurance, before she finally whispered what had happened. She'd seen it. Her mother and a personal trainer tangled up in the supply closet at the gym. Not a hug, not a goodbye. Something that belonged in a bad drama, not real life. No, teenagers should have to carry something like that. But there it was, ugly, heavy, and real. Dave stood frozen, nodding silently as Katie poured it out. Inside, something ruptured. That old wound, the one he convinced himself had healed, ripped open, filled with fury and sorrow. He made arrangements for Katie to stay with a friend and felt a flicker of gratitude that Ethan was spending time at his grandmother's farm. At home, Steph was singing, blissfully unaware, chopping vegetables like the world hadn't tilted. The confrontation that followed could have cracked the walls. Voices rose, silverware rattled in the drawers, and years of buried resentments finally erupted. Every unspoken hurt came crashing out. He didn't recognize the woman in front of him. Her defensiveness was sharp, even smug. She accused him of being emotionally absent, of letting the spark fade, of making her feel invisible. The words stung deeper than he expected. That's when it hit him. Love can turn to bitterness faster than flipping a switch. Filing for divorce felt like walking through a fog. Documents, signature lines, a custody schedule, and a lawyer who sounded more like he fixed transmissions than resolved heartbreak. No guarantees, just flat fees and moving on. Katie chose to stay with her dad without anger. Ethan, still trying to understand, pointed fingers at the adults and waited for life to make sense again. Seasons passed. Friends would occasionally update Dave on Steph's world, like giving the weather report. She'd traded the gym job for something administrative at a hospital. Rumor had it she was dating again, maybe the same trainer, maybe not. Dave made a home in a modest one-bedroom, filled it with second-hand furniture, taught himself real cooking, and joined a Tuesday night bowling league where nobody knew him as anybody's other half. There were moments the grief caught him off guard, like static in headphones, but more often, he felt lighter, like the weight he didn't know he carried had finally slipped off. He still grieved the years he'd given to someone who cashed out twice. But he also smiled at the little rebellions, ordering pepperoni pizza, without compromise, cranking Springsteen while folding laundry at midnight. The past, he realized, was like a ghost town with no road leading back. And for once, he wasn't trying to find a detour. And that's the story. So what do you think? Was Dave too forgiving? Did Steph lose her second chance the moment she crossed the line again? Drop your thoughts in the comments. No sugarcoating. If this story kept you glued, hit subscribe here on Epic Cheating Tales. Give it a thumbs up so the algorithm sends it to more late-night listeners. And tap that bell so you're first in line for the next raw confession. Thanks for staying till the end. Be kind to each other. See you in the next story.